waiver wire. I like the way we did it last week where we both just kind of bring up two names we like per position. So let's just start with quarterback. Give me a name on your list, David. Who do you like this week at quarterback off the waivers?
Well, we talked about him before. It was Tua. I still believe he's a scrambler, and he's going to bring that added element that makes the difference in fantasy ultimately. But if not Tua, you're looking at the streams, and I think Drew Lock, he's had a good game last week, and he faces Atlanta this week.
I had him on my list, but Atlanta, they've just, it's this Atlanta things, that Atlanta post-bye week or, post-coaching firing vibe. I'm a little worried about that defense. Like, they're playing a little better, so that concerned me. But Locke, you got to respect what he did, bringing the Denver Broncos back. This week, I do like Matt Stafford against the Minnesota Vikings defense, but again, post-bye week, is this Minnesota defense gelling? That's a little bit of a risk. Another one, I mentioned him. I didn't have a great projection on him, but Big Ben versus Dallas. He's available in a lot of leagues. If you're playing stream, if you're playing matchup and you need a quarterback, he's one I like. You got another one on the list there, David, for us before we...
It was Nick Mullins, because I've been stashing Jimmy Garoppolo all over the place because of the fantasy playoff matchups. Week 15 against the Cowboys, Week 16 against the Cardinals. That's good news. So Mullins in super flex leagues where you're looking at guys like maybe Kyle Allen being the only available starter, just stash Nick Mullins. If he takes the job, he's going to have some great matchups down the stretch.
Same argument for me. To just one other thing, if you're in a keeper league in any format and you have an IR slot and Dak Prescott is available, just scoop him up and stash him on your IR. He's going to be trade bait next year, or he could be your starting quarterback, depending on how deep your keeper set is. So don't do that. That happened in my league. We're in a deep keeper league. The guy who had Dak dropped him. I picked him up. He's sitting on my IR. Now my quarterback position is locked in next year, depending on the contract situation. But given what's going on in Dallas, I think they're going to pay him. I think they will. Running backs. Why don't you give me your favorite one this week? I love the running backs this week, by the way. I'm going to list a few of them.
I know it's tough because there are multiple, like you said, and I have like 4, 5, 6 names.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, because I only featured 3 in my weekly article at Fantasy and Frames. Right now, as of today, this is Monday morning. I reserve the right to shift this over the next few hours. Right now, I got Zach Moss as my number one claim right now because I believe in the talent of Zach Moss. I liked what I saw coming out of college. And he's the number one back in Buffalo right now in a high-scoring offense. How many guys are available who are the number one? And we're not even talking injuries. You look at the other guys like Pearin, Gus Edwards, Damian Harris. Who is a number one that doesn't have like an injured starter coming back that's available? Zach Moss. He's a number one. He doesn't need an injury. He's already overtaken Devin Singletary.
Yeah, and people that follow me know that I've liked Devin Singletary over the last couple of years, but I agree with you. Moss is the guy. My only concern is Buffalo running volume. I mean, they did it in slop weather, and Buffalo needs to be able to run the ball with consistency, and I think they can do it. I think they choose not to. That's my only concern. I'll give you a pair that are actually still both available, and I think they're both available. One's available in 95% of leagues, and the other one is in about half the leagues, which is shocking to me. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, both guys for the Ravens. You got to stash them. We'll see what happens when Ingram comes back. It gets a little murky. My preference would be J.K. Dobbins because he has a role, a defined role in the passing game. But both of these guys have value. Specifically, both guys have value this week. You could plug either one of them into your lineup and get good points this week.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will throw a little cold water on Gus Edwards, just because through 8 weeks, he hasn't caught a single reception.
Yeah.
He has done have a catch.
Yep.
That is going to add a lot of volatility into his fantasy profile, especially in full PPR, a little bit less than 0.5 PPR. So it is worrisome. But look at the even if Ingram comes back, I think Edwards is overtaking him at this point. So not too worried about Ingram coming back and reclaiming his role.
Right.
I think Dobbins and Edwards will be the 1-2 going forward, even with Ingram in the picture. Last few weeks of the fantasy playoffs, last 4, Dallas, Cleveland, the Jaguars, and the Giants. That's the kind of stash you want.
That's nice. Why don't you give me another name if you got one?
It would be Jamycal Pearin. I also had Damian Harris and DJ Dallas. Obviously, Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson is dealing with some sort of injury. We don't know how serious that is. But I still like Jamycal Pearin. He outsnapped Gore 41-25 and 40-16 the past 2 weeks before this week. Only 28-22 this past week and 10 touches to 10. So it's still kind of 50-50. And they're probably going to continue to use Gore more than we want. But it was a tough matchup against KC. He's going to, I think, continue to get back up in that like 75% of the snap range. So as long as he's seeing double-digit touches, 70% of the snaps, and getting those targets, I think Pearin is still a flex play in the right matchup.
Yep, I'll give you a couple names. Again, surprised that they're still available in roughly half the leagues out there. Jamycal Hasty, who we talked about in the San Francisco segment. I know eventually the San Francisco running backs are going to get better, but San Francisco versus Green Bay, we talked about that at the top of the show. Green Bay's defense is getting gashed in the run game. Jamycal Hasty will do well. I know McKinnon got a touchdown, but Hasty was on the field for the 2 snaps prior to McKinnon, and I believe he even got a goal line carry, if I'm not mistaken. But so he could have had 2 touchdowns. I'm saying it was a coin flip. So there you go. Phillip Lindsay is another one. I think he might only be available in about 35 to 40% of leagues, but he's the best Denver running back I like. And then another guy who we just ranted about is Damian Harris. Talk about guys that aren't being involved in the passing game. He's available in about 70% of leagues when I checked this morning. My big concern is they love using Burkhead and they love using James White as well. Harris needs to be used more in the passing game, but there's some other guys. Wide receiver, David. Why don't you give me a name you like at wide receiver?
We talked about him before. Corey Davis, 36% of leagues. He is one of 3 wide receivers right now with 5 targets and double-digit fantasy points in every single game he's played. The other 2 being Stephon Diggs and Jamison Crowder. His pace, his 16-game pace, you want to hear, Sean? I'm telling you anyways, you better want to hear. 92 for 1180 and 9 touchdowns on 124 targets.
That's a wide receiver 2 at worst.
That's a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I was going to say bottom grade.
For 1180 and 9 touchdowns, that is high-end production, and he's consistent. We'll see how he plays in these tough matchups the next few weeks. Still, absolutely, you need to get him on your roster for the stretch run.
Yeah, I think people were down on Corey Davis because last year they were expecting bigger things, and then A.J. Brown basically took over that wide receiver core. I don't know. I know it's a contract year for Corey Davis. I know Tennessee didn't pick up the option before the season, so maybe he's playing with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but hell, ride it through the playoffs because he is playing really good. You're probably not going to find a better wide receiver. I think he's number 1 on my list as well. I'll give you another name that I like. I like Brandon Aiyuk. Deebo Samuel out. I told actually a guy in my own league, I paid it forward because he gave me some help in another league that I was in Fantasy Baseball League earlier in the year. I couldn't stash him this week. I said, hey, look, you should pick up Brandon Aiyuk, and he answered the bell against Seattle. And again, Green Bay, maybe not the best matchup for wide receivers, but in San Francisco, this offense, they will pass the ball. George Kittle might be a little banged up. He's a good one to pick up. Who's another guy you like?
Well, let me just say Aiyuk, too. We talked about, I mentioned Mullins matchups. Aiyuk's on the same team as Mullins. He also gets Dallas and Arizona the last 2 weeks of the Fantasy Lives. Great stash in Aiyuk. I was highlighting him last week, so I think he went above the 50% threshold just barely, so I didn't include him this week. Jalen Reagor's still available in 86.3% of leagues. Holy moly, guys. Have we seen this rookie wide receiver class? If they haven't proven to you that being a rookie doesn't matter for jack squat, then I don't know if anything will, but it doesn't. It really doesn't matter at this point in the NFL. In the age we're living in, look at what rookies have done, guys. Put the stigma aside. These guys are coming into the NFL more ready than they've ever come into the NFL. They are ready to play from day one. And I believe Jalen Reagor showed the exact same thing with 1 catch for 55 yards in his first game, 4 for 41 in his second. He's increased his fantasy output in all 3 games he's played. Talk about his upcoming schedule. Faces the Giants. He has a bye, and then the Giants, the Browns, Seahawks, Green Bay, New Orleans, Dallas, and Arizona. So he's got the matchups. He's got the talent. He's on a team that needs a number 2 wide receiver to step up. Absolutely, go get Jalen Reagor if he's still available.
Couple other names that I like. You got, depending on Calvin Ridley's health, if he's out, Russell Gage could be a good stream option this week if you're hurting on bye week or, hurting because your players are hurting. Christian Kirk coming off the bye. I talked about him last week. People forgetting about him. Look at his stats since he's been healthy the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's getting in the end zone, everybody. It's a high-octane offense, and they love throwing deep routes to Christian Kirk, using like DeAndre Hopkins or Larry Fitzgerald as I don't know. What's that thing called? For some reason, the word's escaping me. Decoys. There you go. And then the other one that I had to keep my eye on, I mentioned him in the Tampa Bay segment. Kind of a slot guy. I know you have Antonio Brown. I know you have Chris Godwin when healthy. But Scotty Miller, Brady's developing some chemistry with him. He's not my favorite guy, but he's one you got to keep your eye on. If he has a big game on Monday Night Football, I still think he'll sneak through waivers. But if you want a long-term play, that might be somebody in a PPR league that could get you some juice. Anybody else you like, David?
I just got to disagree with Scotty Miller a little bit. I don't see the long-term value when Godwin comes back. I mean, there's just too many options in that offense for me. And I don't like picking up guys for 1 week who I don't believe have any staying power. So I'd rather take a stash on a guy like Mecole Hardman, guy like we're getting into stash territory.
Yeah,
Denzel Mims.
Yeah, Mims.
Who has, again, I don't really care if he's a rookie. He's looked pretty good so far. Had a tough matchup against the Chiefs. Still 2 receptions, I believe 40 yards. Darnell Mooney. And then my super deep sleeper in deeper leagues that is a stash, Auden Tate. This guy has been good as a wide receiver. Last year, he was good. He was productive. He was ranked like top 40 by PFF in grades. And he just came in this past week and caught, I believe, 6 passes. This team is leading the NFL in passing attempts. At a certain point, if they just throw A.J. Green to the wasteland and say, we're done with you, Auden Tate is getting the 3 wide receiver snaps, and he takes over in 3 wide receiver formations.
Yep.
He's going to be a weekly flex play as well. All he needs to do is push A.J. Green out of the way, and I don't think that's too hard of a job to accomplish right now.
Yep. Let's move on to tight end. I'll give you one on my list that still, I guess people didn't get the memo last week, but Dallas Goedert is now off the injured reserve. He did play. Obviously, he's playing himself back into game shape, so they're not using him too much. The turnovers for the Eagles against the Cowboys were ridiculous, but he's going into a bye week, so you could probably wait another week to stash him. Just because of that. I'm sorry, I meant the Eagles are going into a bye week. I might have said Cowboys there, but Dallas Goedert, he is back, and he's probably the best tight end out there that you can pick up, and he's still available in like 75% of leagues or something like that. So he's my number one.
Yeah, it's really a tough week for tight ends because it dries up by halfway through the season. There's really not a whole lot out there. That's why early in the year you start seeing guys pop a little bit. Make sure you add a second, third tight end. Don't be afraid to have 2 tight ends on your roster, guys. Let that stigma go along with the rookie stigma. Having 2, even 3 tight ends on your roster, it's not the end of the world. Worst case, you can trade one, release them later. Don't be afraid. I like Trey Burton, who I am a little bit concerned about Doyle's and Mo Alley Cox usage. Doyle had 45 snaps, Mo Alley Cox had 32, but Burton still had 44 snaps of his own. They don't have any wide receivers who can make plays right now. Phillip Rivers loves the tight end, and again, this statistic I've been dropping every week, and I'm going to continue to drop it until they drop below the threshold, because every single game for the Colts, their leading tight end has had at least 7.9 fantasy points. They haven't gone below it in a single game. Trey Burton again did it this week, got bailed out by that rushing touchdown at the end, but still, they're looking to get Trey Burton the ball in creative ways. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns now in the past 2 games. So I like him as an ad. Then it's kind of like dart throw territory. We got Logan Thomas, who's got 4+ targets in every single game this year. Dalton Schultz, who I don't love, but in 3 games with Dalton DiNucci, he's had 4 for 35, 2 for 22, and 6 for 53. Yeah, not terrible. Albert O, high upside stash. If Noah Fant goes down, he becomes like the guy you're happiest that you have stashed. He'll have more upside than any of the guys I just mentioned above. Had another touchdown, only 16 snaps this past week, so he's clearly running behind Fant, but he's worth the stash. Played with Drew Lock at Missouri. And then I just have the Gerald Everetts of the world, and then obviously Ross Dwelly if you're a George Kittle owner. Yeah. Just like a 1-week fill-in.
That's a good one. Tanyan is still available in more leagues than he should be available in. So if he's available in your league, look, we saw against Minnesota, I think he had 7 grabs, even with Devontae Adams on the field. I think that was the big question about Tanyan is when Adams comes back, does he disappear? Well, he's not disappearing. So he will have value moving forward. You mentioned all the other guys on my list except for one. If you can stash a guy with Odell Beckham hurt, I still say stash Austin Hooper. We talked about Harrison Bryant, who we both like last week. Austin Hooper, I think he could be back after the appendectomy this week. If, worst case, he might be back in 2 weeks. So he truly is a stash. You're not going to be able to play him this week, I don't think.
I think they might be on a bye even this week.
Oh, the Cleveland, even
I
better.
Be wrong.
If you're a forward thinker, Austin Hooper, I think, could pop at the end of the year because Cleveland's going to be over-reliant on the tight end. So that's another one. But let's move into defense and special teams. We talked about this early in the podcast, David, but I think off the waivers, and this was the case the first time they played, both of these were top 10 defenses. The New York Giants and Washington football team, you could start them both, but I like Washington more. The offense is much better with Kyle Allen in Washington, so I tend to favor Washington's defense with a healthy Chase Young against the New York Giants in that matchup. What do you think?
I'd like to say the Titans against Chicago, but they didn't exactly capitalize on a Bengals offensive line that was missing 4 starters.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I mean, what it comes down to is it's got to be obviously the Texans, right, against Giraffe Boy.
Yeah.
Against Mike Glennon and possibly Jake Luton. So Texans got to be the number 1, I think.
Yeah, specifically because Minshew will be out.
Just for streaming. They obviously have no value beyond playing against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'll throw one more. They're not my favorite by any means, but Arizona versus Tua. We didn't see, again, I'm not throwing shade on Tua. We just didn't really see Miami use him because they didn't have to, because their defense is dominating and they put so many points up. But kind of like a second start against, Arizona, they like to blitz. They like to challenge you offensively. Miami can't really run the ball and play ball control. So the ball's going to be in the air. Can they be opportunistic? If you're looking for big points, again, I'd tend to favor Washington versus the Giants personally. Tennessee versus Chicago, you mentioned. But again, you got to be worried about Tennessee versus Chicago because Tennessee's defense. Arizona versus Tua because of the youth. But that could really burn you too, man, if they come out slinging it and Tua is scrambling like crazy. So it's a risk for me. But there you go, man. I think that's a show. Somehow I thought we were more efficient. We end up at an hour and 52. An hour and 52. But a lot of good content, David, as usual. You got anything for the crowd before we go?
No, I think that's just about it, guys. Just make sure to hit that like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. All right. On that note, everybody have a great week. Play some fantasy football and nail your opponents. You got a lot of good on the waivers this week. You could probably field a full roster off of waivers this week. So a lot of good out there. Appreciate it, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you next week. Thank you.